possibility that they'll be able to work in ways they more want to. And if employers can go with that, they will actually get more out of people, because when people choose how they want to work, they work better.
Everyone, welcome to this presentation. My name is Mayela Macias, and my company is Clear Solutions Consulting Services. I provide HR and business solutions, but my key focus is on employee development, training, and executive coaching. Feel free to drop some comments below. We'll definitely be trying to reply to those comments once the live feed goes through. And then I'll have my contact information towards the end in case you have additional questions. There's a link to my website and then my personal phone number. So let's get started. So today we're going to talk about emotional intelligence and emerging leaders. So in today's journey, we will discuss how we can develop, engage, and transform our emerging leaders through the implementation of emotional intelligence into our training, development, and coaching program. We will discuss how we can bridge the gap between the multifaceted generations that are entering, entrenched, and also exiting the workplace. We will also discuss how we understand self-awareness, self-management, mindfulness, empathy, and the effect communication between our diverse group of generations. So have you ever been upset at your boss or an employee and just blown up? That's never happened to me. Just kidding. Have you ever had road rage? Now, I can absolutely attest, I have never had road rage. Again, I know I have. So what about trying to calm down an angry customer? I mean, don't you feel that you want to be on the other side of the phone yelling back at that customer, and you have to control your emotions and the things you want to say, but there's so many things going on inside your brain that you really want to say, but you just can't say it? Well, this process is part of using our emotional intelligence and our amygdala, which is part of our brain. So what is emotional intelligence and how does it tie to our amygdala? Apologies. So emotional intelligence is an individual's ability to recognize and navigate the emotional reactions of those around them. It's the ability to interact with varying emotions and temperaments of different coworkers and our colleagues. Understanding that our emotional intelligence is at different stages for all individuals. We're not all the same. What about our amygdala? What's our amygdala? So the amygdalae are a pair of small almond-shaped regions deep in the brain that help regulate emotion and encode memories. So think about the amygdala being your thumb, and then this is part of your brain. So your amygdala is actually inside the palm of your hand, and then the brain is covering. So that's how where the amygdala is. So this almond-shaped amygdala attaches emotional significance to events and to memories. When it feels threatened, it reacts in a very animalistic way. It's your flight, fight, or freeze response. The amygdala helps in a fire situation, but it also reacts the same exact way if you're about to take a pop quiz. So think about when you're thinking about the amygdala that it knows no difference between a fire and pop quiz. So this is where you need to allow your prefrontal cortex to work so that it can comprehend what is happening and allow logic to kick in. So that's when we talk about taking, a deep breath or counting to 10, why it's so important. I had never understood the importance of that and how it correlated to the amygdala and our prefrontal lobes, because you want to allow that time for your prefrontal cortex to kick in and start analyzing the situation so it can make the best decision for you instead of you reacting to a fight, flight, or freeze syndrome by the amygdala. So anger or fear develops in our brain as to help protect us. This is part of the brain that, as we said, that is called the amygdala, and it's the oldest part of our body, and it's the animalistic part of our ancestors. When we see a threat, the amygdala floods our body with hormones, neurotransmitters that increase our heart rate, it energizes our muscles, and it increases our blood pressure at the same time because it's trying to prepare us to fight. Ready? So think and go back to a particular situation that occurred throughout your life or your career. Have you ever had a moment that you just literally lost it, yelled back at your supervisor or your employees? Were you so angry that you could not control your actions, your words that were coming out of your mouth, and then later regretted what you had said? Your reactions are the amygdala at work. It's using that fight, flight, or freeze method. That's the only thing it knows from ancient times, and it's what it uses to survive. So your amygdala is perfectly working, but we need to learn how to control it. So what makes this worse is that our amygdala has a hard time knowing the difference between an imaginary threat and a perceived threat and an actual threat. So as I mentioned below or before, your amygdala can tell no difference between an actual fire that's an actual threat and you just having a verbal heated conversation with a supervisor or an employee. So can we improve our brain that's causing us to react our way of thinking? And the answer is yes, we can improve our amygdala. So we definitely can grow our gray matter and decrease our amygdala. So by improving our emotional intelligence and identifying triggers, we're able to shrink the fight, flight, or freeze response that our amygdala is always thinking, and then allow our prefrontal lobes to start doing more of the thinking instead of the amygdala. So given that, I have this little quick video of probably the amygdala at work. So probably not his best moment. I'm sure that what led to that particular action was something that had been probably processing over time. And then there was that quick reaction where something happened in this particular case. It was the copier, and I think there was some type of tone or something that ejected out of the copier that really got this gentleman upset. So there is the amygdala at work. Instead of him taking a step back, controlling his emotions, his anger, he reacted in an animalistic way, and it's happened. I've never seen this happen myself in the workplace. I've heard different stories of different situations, and I think this is one of them. So the goal today is if we could master our emotions, then we could also master our actions. So what are some key elements that we need to think about when we think about emotional intelligence? So our first one would be self-awareness. If you're self-aware, you always know how you feel and you know your emotions and your actions can affect the people around you. Being self-aware when you're in a leadership position also means having a clear picture of your strengths, your weaknesses, and that means also behaving with humility. Self-regulation. Leaders who regulate themselves effectively rarely verbally attack others, rarely make rushed or emotional decisions, stereotype people, or compromise their values. Self-regulation is about staying in control, and it's about personal accountability. Motivation. Self-motivated leaders work consistently towards their goals, and they have extremely high standards for the quality of their work. Empathy. For leaders having empathy, it is critical in managing a successful team or organization. Leaders with empathy have the ability to put themselves in someone else's situation. They help develop the people of their team, challenge others who are being treated unfairly, and give constructive feedback and listen to those who need it. Social skills. Leaders who do well in social skills element of emotional intelligence are great communicators. They are open to hearing bad or good news, and they're experts at getting their team to support them and to be excited about their new mission or project. Leaders who have a good social skills are also good at managing change and resolving conflict diplomatically. They're rarely satisfied with leaving things as they are, but they don't sit back. They make everyone else do the work, and they also are part of the trenches. For example, they accept their own behavior, and then they're actually active listening to other people's behavior. In our next slide, we're going to talk about some of these key elements that one particular person possesses. And this would be Michael Jordan. I don't know if any of you have seen The Last Dance, which is a series that's a 10-part series on Netflix that just came out. I saw it over a weekend. I was just deep in the trenches with that particular season, and I couldn't wait to see the next episode and the next and the next. But hearing Michael Jordan is actually key to seeing emotional intelligence at its best, from early on in his career to where he is now. So I'm going to play a quick video of Michael Jordan.
You ask all my teammates, the one thing about Michael Jordan was he never asked me to do something that he didn't fucking do. When people see this, they're going to say, well, he wasn't really a nice guy. He may have been a tyrant. Oh, well, that's you, because you never won anything. I wanted to win, but I wanted them to win and be a part of that as well. I don't have to do this. I'm only doing it because it is who I am. That's how I played the game. That was my mentality. If you don't want to play that way, don't play that way. Break.
So, of course, this type of formula is not for everybody. This is a formula that worked for Michael Jordan and his team. They took him to the 6 world championships that they had with the Chicago Bulls. Again, like he said, maybe people thought he was a tyrant, or they thought he was a jerk, and he even probably used the F word as well. But at the end of the day, when you watch the season and you watch the players, you watch the team and the cohesiveness that they have, yeah, he is probably tough on them. But at the end, it took them to that winning position. It took them to where they needed to be. Once again, I can't help but repeat, this isn't something for everybody, and it's not for all organizations. But there's some key takeaways. One of the things I really enjoyed about Michael Jordan and this particular series is that he's a fighter. He's in the trenches. And he says early on in this video, he doesn't ask anyone to do something that he wouldn't do himself. One of the things about him as a leader is that he's in the trenches, and his dedication and passion to winning and executing perfection has always been with him. Now, if you think about Michael Jordan early on to where he was at the end of his career, early on he was like a one-man team. Michael created the plays, he created the team. He later was taught by one of his managers and coaches that he couldn't carry the weight of the team all by himself, that he needed to rely and trust his team in order to execute effectively. And at the end of the day, that proved to be a really good formula of success for the Chicago Bulls. Because now Michael Jordan didn't feel the weight of always just carrying his team. It was also about the entire team helping him succeed. For Michael Jordan, if you see the series, it's all about optimism. He always sees the glass half full, not half empty. So that's about active listening, because he actually listened to what his coach had to say and he executed and believed in the formula that he was providing him. But what about motivation? Michael Jordan's focus, discipline, and dedication and passion, but all you need is emotional intelligence to be able to control yourself, your body, and your focus at key precise moments that can mean winning or losing a game. So when you're thinking about emotional intelligence, for Michael Jordan and for any basketball player or any sports player, It's not just about using your bodies, it's also about focus. It's also about brain. So when you're using your emotional intelligence, you also need to know when your amygdala needs to be activated and when you need to process and think analytically on how you're going to make that next shot or what's going to be your strategy to win the game if you're losing or you are in a winning situation and you want to hold on to that win. So again, like I said, the strategy is not for everyone, but I just found it very awe-inspiring when you see his dedication to his players, and at the end of the series, how they all yearn and kind of crave being back together and that cohesiveness that they had as a team. One of the takeaways that I also have from this particular series is that sometimes we could be judgmental, you know, not only in our own life, but even when we see personas like Michael Jordan. There was a time in his life where he lost his father, and his escape was going to go play professional baseball. And understanding why he did that, I think it was a way to connect back with his father and holding on to him. But if you see, he wasn't the greatest baseball player, but he had a lot of heart and passion and dedication to becoming the best baseball player. If he would have stayed longer, many of the coaches in the baseball team said he probably would have become better than many of the great baseball players that were there. He just needed time. So Michael Jordan, when you hear him, you hear that he has an obligation to give the best all the time. And I think when you think about a corporate environment, a small business, in life, I think we have a personal obligation to always give our best. Nobody wants to give their worst. And that's what we have to think about our emotional intelligence. Do we always want our amygdala to kick in and be at our worst? Or do we want to learn to control it and develop our emotional intelligence so that we could always be our best? There's not an exact science and there's no perfection to this, but there's always growth opportunities so that we could improve ourselves. What about social skills for Michael Jordan and his team? He wasn't afraid because he was confident in his skills. He said, you practice to gain confidence and not to fear the game. And I really like that statement from him. One of the other things that I liked is that there were different generations in that particular team, and there were different ways of thinking, and there were different ways of being open in society. If you think Scottie Pippen was very, very reserved, and he needed guidance, but he was Michael Jordan's right-hand man. Then you think about Dennis Rodman. Nobody wanted him. Everyone wanted to kind of give up on Dennis Rodman. He came to the Bulls, and it was a whole different situation. Dennis Rodman is actually a really good basketball player, but he had a different way of connecting. He needed to really decompress, check out, and do other things. But then when he came back to the game, he was in it. He was in it 100%. And a lot of the times you need to look at your teams. They're not all going to act or do the same thing or be on the same path. We're all different human beings, and we need to start ensuring that we are open to listening to what our team needs. A lot of the times we need that 15-minute break, or we need to step away and then come back. Some of us are in the trenches 100% and are never going to get out of those trenches. But we need to be open to our team because we're all different as individuals. So how do we improve? Let's start with self-awareness. Well, we could keep a journal. Journals help us improve your self-awareness. If you spend just a few minutes each day writing down your thoughts, this can move you to a higher degree of awareness. Check yourself. So not everyone likes journals. One of the things that I do like is my smartphone. So it has a recording device. And at times, people that are in HR, they find it really hard to find that person to vent with, to just decompress with. And you don't want to always go to your family and tell them every single issue that you're having, because they're going to check out as well. If you don't have a smartphone and you're very, very old school, and I have this particular recording device from when I was back in college, but also record yourself on one of these and carry it with you in your purse or in your portfolio. But I would strongly encourage you that instead of having that anger moment, take a step back, count to 10, go to your office, and maybe either decompress on your smartphone or on this recording device or journal it, whatever helps you have that recording to step back and look either at your notes or at the recording. You'll be surprised at what you find and what you hear. That's why I like the recording device, because then you hear yourself in the heat of the moment. Have you ever had that significant other or parent tell you, if you could only hear yourself right now, you would understand what we're hearing and what we're seeing? And what do we say? Oh, that's not true. You know, I was very calm when I said that. I was not passive aggressive. I did not have a tone when I said that. And what do they say back? No, you did. So if we could rewind time, which is we can't do, but we could definitely rewind a voice recording or from our smartphone, or journalize and go back and read it. See how our tone is. How is our behavior? How angry are we in that moment in time? And that's how, when you start looking at that, you start improving your emotional intelligence, because you start being aware of how you react during those key moments and what you need to do to calm yourself down. So check yourself. The other thing would be to slow down. When you experience anger or other strong emotions, slow down and examine why. Remember that no matter what the situation, you can always choose how you react to it. Also, empower others to feel comfortable in having this difficult conversation with you. You could empower a team member or a close coworker to either tap you on the shoulder so that you know that you need to take a step back, or maybe say a key word. Don't forget, we have that next meeting in 5 minutes. Something that's going to alert you that you probably need to take a step back because now you're getting into a heated situation. Self-regulation, how do we improve that? So you need to know your values. Do you have a clear idea of where you absolutely will not compromise? Do you know what values are the most important to you? Hold yourself accountable. If you tend to blame others when something is going wrong, make a commitment to admit to your mistakes and to face the consequences in whatever they are. You probably will sleep better at night, and you'll quickly earn the respect of those around you by taking responsibility. Practice being calm, practice mindfulness. The next time that you're in a challenging situation, be very aware of how you act. Do not shout at others. Practice deep breathing, exercise, calming yourself, and count to 10. As we discussed, counting to 10 is very, very important, because now you're kicking in your frontal lobes. You have to count. It's not about reacting, it's about counting and forcing the process to go through the amygdala all the way to your cortex. So also try it, like I said, to write down things, negative or positive. You need to write down your emotions, because you need to go back and review and see what's causing you to kickstart your amygdala. Re-examine why you're doing your job. It's easy to forget what you really love, what you do in your career with your family and friends. Take some time to find your passion of what you do. If you're unhappy in your role and you're struggling to remember why you wanted it to do, then it's probably a time to step back and reevaluate this. Starting at the root of the problem, you could look at the situation probably in a new way. That's why I say either journalizing or recording yourself allows you to re-examine what's the actual root of the problem. Know where you stand. Determine how and what motivates you to lead. Be hopeful and find something good. Motivated leaders are usually optimistic, no matter what the problem is. Adopting the mindset might take practice, but it's also worth the effort. So every time you face a challenge or even failure, try to find at least one good thing that you could learn from that situation. It might be something small, but it's actually worth taking that extra step. Empathy, how do we improve that? Put yourself in someone else's shoes or position. It's easy to support your own point of view. After all, it's your point of view. Shouldn't it be the best? But you need to look at others' perspectives. Pay attention to your body language. Perhaps when you're listening to someone, you cross your arms, you move your feet, you go back and forth, you bite your lip, or just in general, your body language. This body language, whether it's yours or someone else, it tells others how you really feel about the situation, and the message that you're giving out is probably isn't positive. And respond to feelings. You ask your team to work late again and again and again, but you're not being in tune with how they feel or what other commitments they have. Be responsible when you're communicating. We understand that this is a work environment. We understand that you're the leader. We understand that there's probably other duties that's assigned, or that we need to get the work done as long as it takes to get it done. but we also need to have that communication. Why is it occurring? What's the end goal here? Why are we doing this? It's important to communicate with your team on the reasons of the why, and also hear your team. Hear what's going on in their lives. They might have some personal things going on that will allow you to be more human and allow them to understand you and you understanding them in this complexity. Learn conflict resolution. Leaders must know how to resolve conflict between their team members, customers, vendors, and not letting things fester. Improve your communication skills. So how do you improve those? How well do you communicate with others? One of the biggest challenges in the workplace for all generations is getting worse and worse over time in communicating or social skills. Why? Because of social media and now technology. Learn how to praise others. As a leader, you can inspire for loyalty of your team by giving praise when it is earned. Be genuine when you're providing that. Not being genuine, it's not going to do you any good to be inspiring or giving praise. And as we're getting to the influence of emotional intelligence and with our emerging workforce and the different generations we have and the different diverse groups that we have, we need to consider all the different nuances that we could have. So the modern future leaders integrate surrounds of both logic and emotion. They leverage emotional intelligence in a way that goes beyond gauging how employees are feeling and towards successfully navigating complex business situations. They can nurture our strengths rather than pick up where the weaknesses are. They create and foster meaningful relationships when we have a multi-generational and diverse workforce. And while there's no less focus on strategy and competition, the modern leader operates with adaptiveness, compassion, and mindfulness. So knowing that we are different from each other in many ways and that our differences can help influence and form our emotional intelligence is key. So when you see this particular chart, we could see many of the differences that we could bring to the table, whether it's working in silos, your communication style, learning different languages, your religious beliefs, your work style, your disabilities, so many platforms that we could bring to the table, and they're just nuances that we need to kind of learn to adapt with one another. One of the things that a lot of new leaders and even current leaders do, it's a common error, is that a lot of the times when we want a team, we get used to selecting the team that we know that's going to perform. Like, I want the best in my team. I want this person because she's numbers. I want this person because she executes. But remember to balance your team. You never know that that particular individual that you're probably not looking at can be an inspiring factor, could be the idea person, could be the creative person, or could be your technology person. So be open to bringing in new team members that could kind of shake up the scope of the work that you're trying to present. So as we look at generations, I highlighted my generation because I'm probably telling more or less my age, but I'm a Generation X baby. And Generation X is kind of between the baby boomers. It's like in a sandwich between baby boomers and millennials. The Zennials, I think they kind of get lost. It was just kind of like an added generation. But when you look at that, we're probably in the aging workforce between 41 and 55. So we're in a mature workforce environment as individuals. We've kind of went through our mistakes. Now we're kind of trying to polish what we're doing. Not all of us, but many of us. And you look at millennials, their age group is between 26 and 40, so they're in that kind of sweet spot. But the generation that's coming in and starting is the Gen Z generation, which is between the youngest age of 8 and 25. So you'll see that a lot between the ages of 18 and 25 coming into the workforce. And I don't even know how Gen Alpha is going to end up reacting with all this technology, all these changes that we're evolving into. We don't even know what Gen Alpha is going to take us in. So one of the things I wanted to kind of, as we're looking at these generations and looking at our industries, we think about Apple, we think about Target, we think about Walmart, we think about Amazon, and they could probably all adapt to the new generational change. But there's certain industries that can't. So let's take, for example, the sewing industry, the manufacturing industry. There's a couple of industries there that are very in tune to certain generations that still have that practice of sewing. And that could be the silent, the baby boomers, and even some of Generation X that might still want to sew. So that particular manufacturing industry, when it comes to sewing, is going to hit and has been hitting a challenge when it's looking at the millennials and the Gen X generation, and how do they incentive or how do they create a talent pool of people that want to learn how to sew, that learn the garment industry. And that's going to become a struggle as more younger generations start coming in, and that's not appealing to them. And sadly, I mean, many of them want to start thinking about robotics, thinking of robot sewing. That might be the only option. But you might need that Generation Z or your millennials to start thinking about ideas of how to make that particular manufacturing industry be productive. Because it can't die. We still need clothes that need to be sewn, or just general utility for utility uniforms for, let's say, the armed forces. So what are some key differences that we could see? We could see differences in expectations and motivation, behaviors, attitudes, beliefs, the way we lead, our financial needs. Our financial needs between different generations are not the same. What are the general interactions that we have with customers and social media? What is the work-life balance? If you're thinking more of baby boomers and even not millennials, Generation X, the work-life balance probably was sacrificed because their goal was to grow in the workforce, grow in the industry that they're in. Millennials and Gen Z think very, very differently. So let's talk a little bit about millennials. Millennials feel a sense of corporate and self-responsibility. So one of the ways millennials are causing a fundamental shift in priorities is in their emerging workforce is the responsibility of themselves, others, and mindfulness. Millennials recognize that we have a responsibility first to each other and second to ourselves. Millennials professionals are almost relentless and ambitious. They catch a lot of flack because we see them as job hunters. We see them as not solid individuals in the workplace. And how do we help them be consistent? But millennials are also very ambitious. They're always wanting self-improvement. They're wanting to see how they could connect, and they yearn that connection with one another, with the team, the supervisor, and leadership. They're very tech savvy, and they're very curious and want to continue learning. Millennials also, and as Gen Z will see, they're very, they want instant gratification. What does that mean? They want praise when it's needed and warranted, but they also want constructive feedback when they need it, but they want it in the moment, not 3 months later, not a month later, not a year later. Many of us, whether we're a boomer or we're a Gen X, we're used to that traditional environment where we're getting feedback either 3, 6, or at our yearly review. Millennials and Gen Zs are more different. They actually want that feedback immediately because they want to correct, because it's about self-improvement. So they actually do work on a work-life balance. They love collaborating. They look for authenticity and transparency. Want career advancement. Some people think that they don't, but they do. It's just their way of thinking of career advancement is very different than probably Gen X or Boomers see it. And they definitely want diversity in the workplace. One of the other things as the last takeaway will be a lot of millennials and Gen Zs wear their emotions on their sleeves. They're not afraid to share their emotions. They won't hesitate. And that's why it becomes critically important to really train your workforce on emotional intelligence and how you have this melting pot of generations coming in that might not understand one another because we think very differently, we react very differently, and we share our emotions very differently. I've always been taught, don't share your emotions at work. That's a private matter. And millennials and Gen Z think differently. It's about sharing. So for millennials, it's also about fostering trust, mediation, and a community involvement. So trust doesn't just happen. And sometimes we think that millennials are very gullible because they actually do give you trust first, instead of trying for you to earn their trust. With mediation can help by forcing yourself to remain in the present for a few moments each day. You could learn to focus your mind, be more keenly on everything else. And when your mind is wandering, you could train your mind to come back so you could actually focus on the task at hand. And becoming involved in the community, that is very important for millennials and Gen Zs. They have to become involved in the community, but they have to find a cause for it. And a lot of the times when they think community outside of the workplace. But community could also be inside in the workplace when you're talking about departments and learning how to interact with departments that you usually do not interact with. So let's say you're in marketing and you need to interact with accounting, and that's not part of your comfort zone because accounting can be very intimidating. And you're thinking, well, I don't want to go over there. You know, they're just going to ask me for things that I don't know, and I don't know accounting. But you have to find a platform in order to involve that type of community. So when we talk about community, it's not just outside community, it's also internal community. So now let's talk about Gen Z. So Gen Z has a couple of struggles. They have independence struggles. They want more information available because their information is easily available where? At their fingertips. They're not effective problem solvers because usually they rely, once again, on their phone to solve a lot of their problems. And they don't do good with stress management. One of the things I do want to say that, you know, in general, we're stereotyping, but there's a lot of millennials, Gen X and Gen Z that might not fit this model, you know, exactly to the T, but a lot of the key takeaways as a whole, they have a lot of the struggles, the availability, the effective problem solvers. You'll see that common denominator among the Gen Z and then the common denominators that millennials possess as well. So Generation Z struggles in this regard, speaking with feelings of fear, hesitance. It keeps them from performing as you might expect them to perform. Another difference is their stress management. They are much less able to deal with stress than other generations. Gen Z has also shown difficulties when it comes to independence and productivity. They often let their emotions take control of their behaviors as it happens, and they become emotional, immature people. So this is why it becomes so important to have some type of a program of emotional intelligence in your workforce. Why? Because as you're bringing in different generations, or if they're already entrenched in your workplace, they'll need to understand the uniqueness that we bring and how we're able to improve our emotional intelligence. We need to move from allowing our amygdala to be working into our frontal lobes to start working. And we've said this about millennials, but I think it's even worse with Gen Z about the helicopter parent. I know I've seen that a lot in my particular industry that I'm in. We do have a lot of helicopter parents that they want to call and negotiate salaries. They want to call and talk to you about why their particular son or daughter received some type of disciplinary action. And those are conversations that you simply cannot have with that parent. But Gen Z and some of the millennials are used to those battles being fought by someone else and not themselves. Now let's talk a little bit of social media. And I'll tell you right now why I have TikTok as my first bullet point, but some of the platforms, not all inclusive, are like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, and of course, LinkedIn. The reason I put TikTok first, I think TikTok, I can't go back and date it, but probably about a year ago or so, I started hearing about TikTok. And I went and I downloaded the app because I always want to know what other people are doing and engaging, what my Gen Z or millennials might be utilizing as their social media platform. And at the beginning, it was more of this dancing generation that were posting videos on dancing, music, and so forth. But it's beginning to grow and it's beginning to shift. It used to be one of those Gen Z and possible some millennial platform. Now it's shifting where it's actually very inclusive. I mean, I'm on TikTok as well, and I've actually created a video as well. And to me, it's very daunting. It was a step that was not, it was outside of my comfort zone, but I needed to push myself into that element because I needed to understand it. For a lot of the Gen Z generation and millennials, it's very natural for them to create video content about whether things they know or don't know. For me, my mind process is more analytical and thinking, I don't want to speak about something that I'm not a subject matter expert in. I don't want to just do a dance when I don't want to look silly doing that. Millennials, Gen Z, they don't care. It's not about what other people think or are saying. It's really about their own feelings and what they're enjoying doing. They're just almost like free spirits in life. So when you're looking at your workforce, think about, yes, Facebook has about 2.6 billion, subscribers or followers. And then when you look at, I'm looking at TikTok, 800 million, there's a key difference there. But there is going to be a shift where either TikTok or another social media platform takes over and becomes king over Facebook. So a lot of the people that say, when you look at TikTok, when you look at Instagram, Facebook is an aging generation. It's just used to keep track of stories and family members and friends. Instagram is more like almost like a magazine now where you're seeing a lot of pictures and editorials. And TikTok has become more engaging. You could easily lose yourself in TikTok by spending an hour a day. And that's what the Gen Z and many generations are doing now. They started measuring how much screen time they have on TikTok, and it's about 54 minutes a day. And it's increasing. And when you think about TikTok, that you think, okay, well, this is just Gen Z. No, this is also Gen Alpha. I see 4-year-olds, 10-year-olds doing their dances on TikTok, and I think it's hilarious. It's interesting how everyone is just joining in this particular, new social media platform. But I also enjoy their creativity, the fact that they feel comfortable in their own skin to do all these things. So what does that mean for all of us? It's thinking outside the box when it comes to the different generations and our emerging leaders, our entrenched leaders, and our exiting leaders. Exiting leaders are obviously taking a lot of valuable information out of the workplace. So we need to ensure that our entrenched leaders and emerging leaders are capturing that information because it's important to have. And a lot of the times we focus on our emerging leaders but forget that they need a role model, someone to shadow. And entrenched leaders can sometimes kind of just fall by the wayside and all of a sudden become very stagnant. So we also need to kind of change that up. And how do we do that? We need to create diverse work groups to ensure that we're all understanding one another and merging them together, understanding what makes us different and the value of that. Because being different is valuable to everyone. It's going to take your company, your industry into a different platform, and that's what is needed. Now, when you think about TikTok, I see a lot of ads now. Before, you didn't have that many ads, but companies are jumping in this bandwagon knowing that they need to capitalize on what TikTok is doing. So they need to create their own content. And how do they create it? They need to engage that in those emerging leaders that are creating this content, because someone like me might really, really hesitate. But if I have a millennial or a Gen Z pushing me out of those boundaries, I might do a little more than the normal. I probably won't be as experienced and probably as a risk taker as them, but we sometimes need to take those risks to be thinking outside of the box. So train them on emotional intelligence before they develop bad habits as leaders. Learn from others' bad habits. How are we investing in our emerging leaders today? Are we sending them to conferences? And obviously right now we can't, but there's probably a lot of either Zoom meetings, WebEx, team meetings that are available for our leaders to develop. Listen to what your leaders want, or Succession planning, when you're bringing in new emerging leaders, what are they needing? How do they want the engagement of leadership? How do they want to grow their emotional intelligence? How do you tune in so that they're active listening and not tuning you out immediately? Invest in your talent. Provide content knowledge that they could relate to. Provide them with role models. And of course, as we talked about the exiting leadership, you do need to tune into your exiting leadership to capitalize on that information that they're taking with them. So when we talk about emerging leaders, I also want you to think about cognitive thinking. Do a deep dive on how leaders behave, identify entrenched thoughts, beliefs, and assumptions. Leaders and people are made up of different experiences. Encourage new ideas or ways of thinking among all your leaders. When we talk about emotional intelligence and leadership, take a step back and listen to all the different voices in the room. Active listening is critical. Don't attack or criticize, and foster an environment of respect. So this emotional intelligence journey is taking us again to active listening, a third way of thinking, and committee participation and leadership. So again, everyone wants to be heard, and nothing will lose you than the support of others that are not listening. So listening to others' ideas and giving evidence that you understand and value what they're saying is critical to the success at any level. One of the main things I always preach is when you're really active listening, you really need to turn off all other distractors, whether it's your laptop, your email, your phone. Turn it down, turn it off, and really listen to the person that's in front of you. That's the biggest takeaway, and they'll respect you for it because they'll know that you were in it and you were listening to them. They actually want eye contact. You working and trying to multitask, you really are not going to truly listen to what that person either problem is or idea that they're offering. The third way of thinking, as they start to take our leadership opportunities, your staff members will frequently find themselves pulled into disagreements between two parties with opposing viewpoints. Often, however, there are more than just two choices. The ability to find a third way, such as exploring an unexplored solution, can be effective, and it could break the gridlock. Committee participation and leadership. Committee participation, sometimes you need committees in order to have a entrenched of ideas that can surface and have that kind of aha moment for you. A successful committee, you're also going to have different ways of thinking, and you're also going to go back to conflict. And again, you need to be able to navigate that conflict. Conflict is good as long as you know how to navigate it and you do it respectfully. As we continue with this journey, we also need to understand the team, provide conflict resolution, and work on a professional management brand. So potential leaders who want to manage a team need to learn to identify the working styles and values of the people around them. Achieving team objectives is much easier if the leader understands how to connect the goal to the individual's motivations as a team member. An understanding of the temperaments can also be a powerful tool in managing the inevitable conflict between the staff members. So that leads us into conflict resolution. Conflict is a normal part of working with people in business, but sometimes that conflict can escalate and turn ugly. Do our emerging leaders have the skills to stay objective and confront issues professionally? Do they know the proper protocol to navigate conflict while protecting both themselves and the institution or company? What about our professional management brand? Most of these emotional intelligence skills contribute to an emerging leader's professional brand. But many young leaders underestimate how important it is to manage the professional reputation with the community and also within the departments. So building good relationships across all departments and divisions and developing a reputation for professionalism and collaboration can be key to effectiveness in any environment. So with emotional intelligence, we're also going to talk about adaptability. Adaptability is an emotional intelligence skill driving leaders to adjust quickly and achieve success adaptively, for leaders to adapt quickly and deliberate on getting results. Although emotional intelligence might be at first perceived to only one measure of emotions like empathy and moods, it also measures critical thinking at any level. So with emotional intelligence, we're also going to be practicing self-awareness, listening carefully, be open and embrace conflicts, and also looking at our culture. So we need to take stock at how we feel and react to certain stressors throughout the day. Notice how your emotions contribute to your actions. In order to understand the emotions of others, you first must be in tune with your own emotions. Listen carefully. This is surprisingly difficult for some leaders. It can be tempting to think that listening is merely following rather than leading. However, in order to make and sustain more meaningful connections and tailor communication styles to the right people, learn to become a better listener. Be open and embrace conflict. A good leader is willing to problem solve and dive into disagreements rather than just run away from the conflict. A leader with a high emotional intelligence level is much more likely to problem solve effectively, rationally, and with a certain level of poise and composure. Make culture a priority. Purpose-driven leaders understand that engaging and exciting employees and working to cultivate an environment that fosters their creativity and engagement can be successful and productive to the environment. So as we close, I want to make sure that we still understand that emotional intelligence is about self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and of course, our social skills. As you discuss or implement emotional intelligence program to your organization, think of the multifaceted and diverse team your members have or will have. Foster an environment of open communication and feedback, even if you don't agree with it. It provides an opportunity for growth. Remember to find your key word or your number to help you become self-aware that you need to take a step back and reboot. This will give you this will allow the prefrontal lobes time to receive the information on what is occurring in the moment and analyze the best solution for you. Sometimes staying quiet and choosing your battles is the best path to take. And with that, I'm closing and thanking you for your time. I am leaving you with my information in case you have any questions. And as always, please feel free to comment on the comment box below, and I'll answer any of those questions once we go into the live format. Thank you.
We definitely don't want to make breastfeeding a barrier to the women that work at Bazaar Voice. It's very important that they're bonding with that child. They're going to be happier because their kids get sick less often. So I think it makes tremendous sense for us to do that.
It's a win-win situation. Happy employer, happy employee, then you've got happy clients. So go for it.